Alright guys, Jane here, and we are talking about plotting. So, if you've been following what I'm doing for Nanoprepmo, you know that I believe it is very important to have success in Nanoprepmo or in NaNoWriMo by being prepared. And there are three elements that every story has that we should know ahead of time before going into NaNoWriMo and have them reasonably planned out. And that is character, plot, and setting. I've already done a character video, I've already done a setting video. So here's the plot. Basically, plot in a story is what happens. And it's a good idea to know before your story even starts what the story is about. There's so many stories out there or people that are like, hey, I've got this cool premise, but they don't really have any movement. Plot is what changes in your world, what events happen that create those changes. If you are doing a murder mystery, some of the elements of the plot are there's got to be a murder. The person who is the detective or investigating the murder has to get involved somehow. There has to be clues along the way. There has to be, people who are suspected. And at some point you got to have a solution. And if you're following the tropes, a lot of times there's an incorrect solution and somebody wrongly being accused first. And then finally the right person is revealed. And at the end, after all that, there has to be some kind of justice. Usually that person's arrested, but not always. I've seen some stories where a person was institutionalized because they couldn't be arrested because of their class, or they were blackmailed, or anything that makes the reader feel like the story, some kind of justice happened and they're happy with it. That is again for a cozy mystery. For a romance, the characters have to fall in love. What is happening in the story that makes them fall in love? You can't just have encounters of, hey, these characters hung out and they fell in love along the way. You have to have something happening to drive the story forward. You have to have some kind of movement. The plot is kind of, especially in a romance or other character-driven story, the characters are kind of the cars. They're what's moving, but they're traveling along the plot, which is a road. And you have to know where the road goes so that you can kind of know what your story is doing. So what I want you to do is figure out first, start with a premise. What is your story about? And I don't mean what is the genre. I mean, in my story, I'm doing a sci-fi. I have characters who are joining a religious colony. They are traveling from planet to planet to try to find a place that they can colonize, where that's inhabitable and that they can get along with the natives. Along the way, one of the characters who started out as a non-believer becomes a believer, and one of the characters who started as a believer becomes a non-believer. These characters happen to be married, and so at the end of the story, they are at odds with each other as they are at odds in the beginning. And the plot is basically all the stuff that happens to get from point A to point B. For me, that is things like he starts to see cracks in the things his leader does. There is somebody in charge who does some criminal stuff, and their prophet doesn't discipline him, doesn't seem to notice, and doesn't seem to be being told by God. He says he talks to God, but he doesn't know what's really going on in their spaceship. On the other hand, the wife, she's seeing miracles. She's seeing things that shouldn't happen. People being raised from the dead or healed or whatever, and so she becomes a believer. So all of these things are intricate to how does your story move forward. What I would like you to do is map out 10 plot points in your story, starting with the beginning and the end, and then 8 in between. So for your romance, for instance, it might be the characters meet on Tinder, or they get to know each other on Tinder. They meet in real life. They go on this date. He has a problem with his mom. The new girlfriend, helps him solve the problem with his mom. Then they move in together. I mean, whatever your course of events is. And again, that's not a real good one. I'm sorry, I was trying to give a good example, but I'll just do one for my story because I already have that plotted out ahead of this video, because creating on the fly is a lot harder than it might look. And I try not to, I do rehearse these videos in my head and I have a basic idea of what I want to talk about, but I also really like speaking freely, as if you guys, we're just my friends and we were chilling and talking about writing. So with my story, my characters get on the spaceship first thing, and there's like a discussion about, oh, we're gonna miss people, and my girl character, her name's Mary so far, she's really like sad because she's never gonna see her mom again. Her mom and her didn't have a great relationship, and her leaving is a big deal. So plot point 1, getting on ship. Plot point 2, getting assigned jobs. Plot point 3, she meets a new friend, and that friend is pregnant, and they decide that they're going to start a school once they move, so she has some forward movement. Plot point 4, her husband Jasper, he is also assigned his job, and in doing so, finds that he doesn't like it very much. Plot point 5, there is a coming of age ceremony where we learn a lot more about the cult in general. I don't think I have anything else going on as far as character development, but I think Mary might learn some stuff she doesn't already know about the cult that makes her curious. I'm on 6. Plot point 6, Jasper sees somebody stealing from their church, the tithing, basically, stealing tithing, and is upset that the prophet doesn't notice. Number 7, he finds out that somebody higher up in the church, not the prophet, but one of like the people under the prophet, is having an affair, and the prophet doesn't notice. Mary witnesses a miracle, and that starts to shape her beliefs. Her husband sees sees an exchange between the prophet and his wife, where the prophet says, "I'm not sure I'm really a prophet. I might just be crazy." The 5th one, which would be the end point, they come on this planet or they land and start colonizing this new planet. So again, it's kind of a timeline, it's kind of a plot. Have 10 points. Because if you have 10 points, then you can move through the plot and the story. And even if you choose not to outline, I do suggest outlining. We're going to talk about outlining a little bit in future videos. But even if you choose not to go any further in your planning, but having 10 plot points, a character sketch for all POV characters, and the basics of your setting, you can probably finish Nano without too much trouble and without some of the problems that people tend to struggle with as they are writing a new story. Things like, okay, I'm a quarter of the way through, what do I do now? Well, the answer would always be move to your next plot point. So 10 things that are going to happen in your story. If you're not feeling inspired and if you don't really know what's going to happen next, just move to the next plot point. In the Tinder example, your first plot point is they're going to get together, then they got to go see his mom. They got to solve whatever problem with his mom. Then let's say they move in together because of the mom thing. Maybe she's sick and they need to move in to take care of her. And so on and so forth. And whenever you get lost or confused, you'll just hit the next plot point. That is really helpful as a writer and something I do, because I don't always do a complete outline. I sometimes do, but I don't always. And even I find if I can just map it through, as long as I have 10 plot points, for most novels, I can still get to the end. Because you got to figure you're doing 50,000 words, that's 5,000 words for each plot point. And again, you're probably going to be really inspired in the middle, like, oh, I need this scene and this scene and this scene. So you're not necessarily going to move through all those plot points, but if you get stuck, or like directly through, but if you get stuck, you're going to say, okay, well, I just had this scene, so clearly I need this next scene. And how do I get there? It will help you so much with inspiration, and it'll help because with NaNoWriMo, you're not going to have a lot of time to stare at your computer and decide how your story goes. You kind of need to know how your story goes before you sit down and write it. You have to kind of have an idea in your head and know how you're getting there so that your time sitting at your computer can be spent productively typing instead of gazing into the distance and going, how do my characters get to the end of the book? What is the end of the book? You know, it's important to have a really strong plot and know what's happening and what changes happen along the way so that you can get from point A to point B and you know your stops along the way. All right, guys, you know what to do. Likes and subscribes, please. I would love to hear about your challenges with plotting, anything I can help you with. If you have any kind of plot points that you'd like to share, feel free. I know sometimes people are a little hesitant to share things because they're afraid other people are going to steal it, but here's the thing. Even if I took your 10 plot points, your start and your finish, I don't have enough information. I wouldn't do this, by the way, but even if I did, or somebody else on the site did, they wouldn't have enough information to create the same story you are. There's a lot of stories that kind of go through, I mean, almost every cozy mystery goes through the same basic plot points. A body is found. The detective starts investigating. There's clues. The detective almost dies. The wrong person is incriminated. Then they find out the right person. You know, it's stories kind of are fairly typical. So if you want to leave any of your plot points, you can be really vague. You don't have to be specific, but you know, I'd love to hear what you're planning on writing and any ideas that you have, and you know, just if you're excited about NaNoWriMo. All right, guys, talk to you later. Bye.